income, it tends to grow fast. All the East Asian countries save and invest about more than 30% of their national income. This is the East Asian 30% plus is very high savings. Latin American countries save much less than that, European countries save less than that. India used to be like the Latin American countries and European countries, low savings country. Something happened in two steps. Once in the 70s it picked up, and then from about 2002 our savings rate picked up. And now we save, right now it's 32.5%, but we've gone up to 36%, and the savings rate is not like a stock market indicator. Once you're at a level, you'll go up 2%, come down 2%, you're roughly there. India is now in the mid-30s, so about 35% roughly say, of our national income we are saving and investing, which is actually a remarkable transformation of the Indian economy. It puts us in the category of the East Asian countries. And it's not surprising, India is today growing faster than the East Asian countries. It's just falling short of China. China saves a somewhat crazy amount, 49% of its income, I think it's over-saving. India's is very comfortable now. That's the good part. I do feel, not just because I'm from the Ministry of Finance, the fiscal situation of India is actually very good. Again, you can do it in comparison with countries. European countries earlier used to be the countries with good fiscal management. The world seems to have turned topsy-turvy. The European countries' fiscal situation, whether you take fiscal deficit or the total amount borrowed by the government divided by the national income, for India, the figure will be about 80%. We in the Ministry of Finance will say 75%, the IMF will say 82%, take the mean, 79%. So total borrowing of the government divided by national income is 79%. In several European countries, it's over 100%. In Japan, it's close to 200%. So there are now industrialized countries whose fiscal situation is out of control. Fiscal deficit, Indian fiscal deficit this year is, the budget projection is 5.5%. We don't know where it will go. The 3G auctions are always in the news, have brought in a lot of money, but as with any plan for a year, there will also be some outflow pressures in some dimension, but 5.5 is a reasonable expectation, which is again better than a whole host of European countries. So fiscal policy is in good situation, growth is in good situation. What's not in good situation? Well, there are two things. One is growth. For some years we've seen we want to sustain it. And what should we do about this growth being sustained and a growth rate of 10%? Number two, India's income distribution. It'll be shameful of us if we look away from that problem. We have done badly. There are no two ways about it. With so much growth, the mass of poverty that we have in India is far too high. And we need to think through the reforms and how do you change to distribute our income better. We can't continue the way we are doing. Some of the political insurgencies that you are seeing are indirectly reflections of this kind of a ill distribution of income. So that's really a dimension on which we've done badly. On the growth front, we have done well, but there is a risk of the growth slowing down, for which we need more reforms. Governance was mentioned by Mr. Gupta. That's something been very close to my heart. You know, I will just leave you with some, with the global situation now, with the Greek crisis and all, we are a bit vulnerable. So we need to put in some important reforms. Let me just mention a couple of areas in which we, more the principles than the details. I don't want to inflict details of reforms on you, but some of the principles that we ought to follow in constructing our reforms. I'm not directly addressing the European crisis and its fallout on us, but if you want me to go into, I can at the end of my lecture. The nature of the reforms on governance, the one important principle I believe is where we fail is properly anticipating the rationality of the agents the citizens and ordinary people who go about. We take them to be either mechanical, robotic agents who will do what they are supposed to do, or they are angels. They will not cheat, they will do nothing false, and you devise systems and the systems go wrong. Example, our food for the BPL households. How do we do it? We subsidize the food, hand over the grain to 500,000 PTS stores all over the country, and tell them that we've given you the subsidy already. As soon as you've sold them cheap grain, which is selling at a higher price on the market, you've handed over the subsidy to the PDS store owner. And then you tell the PDS store owner, now you sell it at a cheap price to the BPL households. Just think of the PDS store owner's rational calculation at that point. There is a market price for this grain. If he can take out a part of this grain and sell it on the market and put in some stone chips and gravel into the grain meant for the poor, he would have made money out of this system. There are studies now which show that the wheat that we try to get to the below poverty level household, these are formal studies, there have been lots of popular studies, 67% of that wheat misses the target, which means to get 1 kg to the poor households, government spends 3 kgs, 67, so 2/3 goes out, 3 kgs, 2 will miss the mark and 1 will get there, which is just too wasteful in both ways. It puts a fiscal strain. You're spending money and not getting the target. It's also leaving the poor people poor. They are not getting the benefit. They are getting 1/3 of the benefit that they are supposed to get. Here, if you take account of the rationality of the individual, that the store owner is also a calculating agent, a little entrepreneur, whom if you give the wrong incentives, that person will try to cheat the system, you do it differently. My background is in economics. In particular, one area I work on is game theory. In game theory, a principle that you learn from very early is that other people, it's not good enough to be rational and intelligent. You have to be able to anticipate that everybody else is also rational and intelligent. And if you don't anticipate other people's rationality correctly, you will make mistakes. A very beautiful story from India, I don't even know from where in India, it was sent to me by a friend, which illustrates the importance of the other side's rationality being calculated. It's the story of this hat seller. Hat seller is going with lots of hats down a forest path to some town to sell these hats. When he feels very sleepy, he puts down all the hats and he goes off to sleep. When he wakes up, to his dismay, all the hats have been taken up to a treetop. Monkeys have carried them up. And he's desperate. He's a poor man. What will he do? In desperation, he takes off his own hat and throws it down on the ground. Monkeys, as you know, are great imitators. So all of them start taking off their hat and throwing their hats down. So this man goes quickly, collects all these hats, and peacefully goes off on his way. 40 years have passed. His grandson has become a hat seller again. He's going down the same forest path, feels sleepy, he sets down all these hats, and he dozes off to sleep. When he wakes up, he finds that all the hats are gone. Monkeys have taken them up to the treetop. What will he do? He's desperate, he's a poor man, when he suddenly remembers his grandfather's story. So he said, oh, I've solved the problem. So he takes off his hat and throws it down. At which point, one monkey only comes down, picks up this last hat, walks up to him, gives him a tight slap, and says, you think only you have a grandfather? You know, this is the shortest lecture on this very complex subject of game theory I can give you. Game theory is all about anticipating the other side's rationality. I get very upset when I sit with my colleagues and they will say, look, we've done this right, but the people are spoiling the system. We've done this right, but the states are adopting the system. Yes, it's happening. It would be nice if people had a lot of integrity, and I'll have a thing to say. I feel growth also depends on personal integrity and honesty. But you have to take the way the world is. And if you devise, when you're planning a system and devising a system, you have to calculate the rationality of the agents who will deliver. You can't treat them as machines who will do it perfectly. Then you will not take precautions against faults in the delivery mechanism. Let me go into one bit of detail which in the economic survey I have put in a big plug for. This thing about handing over cheap food grain to the ration shop owners and asking them then to sell it cheap below the market price to the poor. One way of getting around it is the following. The system I'm going to suggest will not solve every problem. Nothing on earth will solve every problem. But it will take care of this if you take into account this calculation that, look, you don't want to hand over value to 500,000 stores and expect them all to diligently then hand over to the poor. What do? You try to give the subsidy directly to the poor. How do you do it? You can give it in the form of either coupons or a smart card. You hand over to the poor and tell the poor that, look, we are not going to lower the market price. but I've given you coupons, same thing. You will get